Hello, and welcome to the College CrossCast, a lacrosse news and analysis podcast. My name is Saif Fakadu, and I am one of your hosts for the show today. On the other lines with me are two of my partners in crime, Adam Epstein and Jake Nazar. What's good, gentlemen? How are you guys doing?
Let's go.
It really hasn't sunk in that, one, that there's games in 3 days, but two, that after basically half a decade, Safe has won the war and we have January lacrosse.
Listen, would I have liked it to be under other circumstances? Yes, obviously. However, on the bright side, games start in 3 days. So, we got to always be happy about that.
I'm so excited that not only am I going to pay for Pio Vision, Denver's like their personal streaming platform, but I'm going to watch Bellarmine Mercer on Saturday morning, a crisp January morning. I'm going to watch the Mercer Bears. I'm going to see our boy Sean Goldsmith score 8 goals to open the season. It's going to be a good time.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have to we've gone so far in on this. We're just gonna have to live tweet Mercer games. We're gonna need someone on Wednesdays at 2:00 whenever they play some game. To just
I'll volunteer to be on Goldsmith watch.
Like those Uncle Sam posters. We need you to join the Mercer Bear Army with us. It is wild that the games are starting. So, obviously this was a horrendous year, but maybe after so many years of doing this with you guys, and on the lax boards and everything, my mind kind of does think in lacrosse season. So it pretty much is when almost feels like 2 weeks ago was Penn State Cornell game, and all right, well, good, the season starts now. So that has definitely lightened my mood going to 2021. And
I still have dreams about the Hopkins Mount St. Mary's game, which is the last game of the season.
Listen, it was a turning point of the season. What could have been, but
I remember it was the day that the last game I think was the Ohio State Notre Dame game, and it was that was the day that I remember they told us to go home for school, and basically everything was being put on pause for I guess at that time they were telling us for 2 weeks or something like that. And I remember following that game along on my phone in the mall, which at that now to me just seems abhorrent. Holy crap, I was in a mall. And 2 days later I didn't leave my house for a month or 2 or 3. And it's just wild. That whole week when you realize one day everything was normal, and then you're can't believe I was doing that 3 days before.
Yeah, definitely.
It's crazy. We're literally at the point where it's too late to go back. There's gonna be some kind of lacrosse. They can't we've passed the threshold, and it's actually happening, and it hasn't fully hit me yet. I don't really even remember what watching lacrosse is like. So I think this weekend's games are gonna be fun.
Yeah, folks. So hopefully you guys are as excited for the upcoming season as we are. Obviously, Ryan would have normally joined us, but he's off for the evening. So we're going to do our Cross 2021 season preview. And I guess let's start out with recent hiring of J.L. Repper to Holy Cross. Gentlemen, guys, initial thoughts, good hires, and maybe your expectations for the Crusaders.
It's a heck of a hire.
Yeah.
Pretty much as soon as the job opened, we had heard that they were targeting, some prominent assistant names. They were going after, the big assistant names in the sport. Repper was one of them. I think maybe Michael Phipps of Georgetown. I can't recall exactly the 4 or 5 names that we heard, but it was shocking to when we, heard these what they were going after, because to me it was just one, I was kind of shocked they were actually doing a search, considering it's 2 or 3 weeks before the season, and then that considering the instability that's kind of surrounded that program for the last couple of years, that they would be able to command that kind of interest in the job. But credit to them, they did, and they were able to pull, one of the best offensive coordinators, best assistants in the country. Reppert really transformed Maryland's offense in the mid 2010s there, and had a tour time winner in Matt Rambo, won a national title, and then they've continued to be in the top 10, be it in adjusted offensive efficiency wherever you find it. Sometimes in the top 3, over the last 5 or 6 years. He had not gotten as much attention or as interest in jobs as you might have expected due to the success that he had, and maybe that was a reason that he was ready to jump on this one. But I think it also speaks to, this is not a bad situation by any stretch. Holy Cross was a good team last year. They were 4-3. They beat Vermont. They beat Harvard. Their losses were to Providence. Army was a good team. Lehigh, not a bad team at all. They had success under Peter Burke. He kind of turned things around to a solid level. They went 7-7 in 2019. I think they made the Patriot League tournament that year. Then Northeast, where they're at in Massachusetts, I believe, has some good talent, produces good players up in Connecticut as well. There's Connor Kelly and some other prominent guys who've gone to Hopkins as well have come out of that area. So it's not a bad recruiting base by any stretch of the imagination. You're not in kind of far out there. There's players around them in that area that they can obviously, the big schools are good coming after those players too, but that they can, kind of make a run for. And so I think that if you can get some stability in there, if you can give them, these players a consistent, steady presence for 3 to 4 years, I think it's not a bad, situation to be in. And I think Reppert, considering this success he's had as an assistant, coaching really good offenses, game seems to be, trending towards offense with the shot clock, and is what we've seen over the last couple of years. I think this could be something that works out pretty well and gets them, closer to they kind of moved up from the bottom of the Patriot League 5-6 years ago, now up to the mid-pack. Maybe we could see them potentially, up towards the top 3 or 4 teams there in the next couple of years.
And one thing I sort of didn't think about during the hiring process for this job was that Reppert has like 3 or 4 years of experience coaching in the Patriot League already with Navy. And obviously he played there as well. And I guess you should never really underestimate the allure of an open head coaching job in D1 men's lacrosse. I mean, there's only 70-something teams. Half of those jobs are like have heir apparents waiting in the wings to join, to get promoted. And, the other half like aren't ever getting turned over. And there's only a certain set of candidates that are available for every set of jobs. Like when one does become available, I guess you just jump on it. Like despite the internal turmoil they've had in the program the last couple of years, it is, like Jake said, I think it's a pretty good situation objectively, like holistically, if you look at the roster and the league they're in, location for recruiting and all that stuff. So I expect Reppert in a couple of years to have that team maybe not winning the Patriot League tournament, but making the Patriot League tournament and competing and making some noise.
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal hire for Holy Cross. We were joking around in the DMs, maybe you've a sign of lacrosse's growth that the boosters and the parents really get involved in making moves. But I think that the way that they were able to lure an assistant of Reppert's, experience and brings like an instant credibility to the job. And I think if you're a Holy Cross fan or AD, you got to look at schools like BU in the Patriot League, Loyola, schools with similar characteristics, similar tuition costs, and you can say, you can kind of be a player, and if you get the right coach and you attract the talent from within your state and whole New England, Holy Cross could make a move from, as we've noted, they've gone from the cellar to middle of the pack, and it's not that far to be one of the top 4 Patriot League teams if you have the right coach and the right mix of players. So great hire for Holy Cross, and I'm excited to see what they can do with Reppert. Moving on to probably, for us at least, really exciting hiring. Coach Bob Benson, formerly of the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, is the new offensive coordinator at Maryland, replacing J.L. Reppert. Boys, how are you guys feeling? Obviously, you guys know how I feel. I love this. It just brings us together even more. But, as both Hopkins and Maryland fans, your initial reactions, and, we'll talk about, whether you approve of the move.
I approve of it. I think one thing that's the thing about this situation is that I make this point in college football a lot, where it's when Alabama's offensive coordinator position came open, and I'm like, it doesn't matter who they hire. Like, they have the best players. They have 5-star wide receivers, just coming out of the teams, coming out of their porters. They don't put up numbers, no matter who's there. And it's a similar concept, at least for this year, with Maryland. It ain't hard to, coach offense for Jared Bernhardt, Logan Wisnowskis, Bubba Fairman, Anthony DeMeo, Eric Holden, and Griffin Brown. That's not it's just, you don't got to reinvent the wheel, really, with those guys. So, considering, that's just one thing. It's, I'm not that, obviously you want to hire a good coach, and they did. But it's just one of those things where it's as long as you get someone in there who the players like and who, can relate to them effectively, they're going to put up numbers. We'll see. I mean, he got hired as they said interim. I'm assuming that's just basically if this goes well, which I assume it will, they'll hire him full time in the summer. Maybe there's an option for another 12 months, 24 months, whatever it may be. But yeah, Bobby Benson had a bunch of great offenses at Johns Hopkins. He had good offenses when he came in there around 07, 08. They were, running when they did what was the offense at that time, which was have a bunch of really big athletic midfielder dodge down the alley and shoot past people. And they did well with that. They won a national championship. They made another Final Four or two. And then things kind of fell off offensively for them for a bit there. And then he reinvented with the Stanwicks, and they did a bunch of good stuff with two-man games, Big Littles, and, the pair set that kind of just became in vogue around college lacrosse. And they had top 10 offenses and offensive efficiency for nearly every year for a good 5-6 years there before the last season, 2020, when really they just didn't quite have the same level of talent. But he knows how to coach offense. He's had a bunch of great offenses. And then, again, from the, just perspective of this year, where I don't think they're going to change a lot, I'm sure he'll put in his stuff on the extra man, where, Hopkins routinely had the best or second or third best extra man offense in the country. But, where it's, you're not really probably changing much. He's familiar with the Big Ten. He knows a lot of their players because he either recruited them or Hopkins coached against them. And he knows, the opponents that Maryland will be playing, especially if the Big Ten, as it seems like, is going to a, all-conference schedule, because he coached against them for many years. So that makes sense from that perspective as well. I didn't see it coming at first. I remember someone added us after the Reppert hiring was announced, mentioned his name, and I was like, it'd be fun, it'd be funny, it'd be good content, but I don't think it's going to happen. And then, wouldn't you know it, 2 days later, it happened.
Definitely great content. I will give it that. From the perspective of a Hopkins fan and alum, I don't begrudge Bobby Benson for taking this job at all. You take whatever work you can get, especially it's not like he was coming from a job. After he left Hopkins with Petro, he has been coaching in Georgia at a high school and at a club program, which is totally fine, but it doesn't compete with being the offensive coordinator for Maryland. There's probably a contingent of Hopkins fans who aren't happy with a former Blue Jay going to coach for the enemy, but Maryland has a pretty long history of hiring former Hopkins players, including Scott Marr and most recently Kevin Connery, who, I don't want to give him all of the credit, but he deserves a lot of credit for their championship, running the defensive end of things in 2017. And that's what got him the Michigan job. So I think it's good for Benson. I think for the reasons Jake outlined, it's going to be fine for Maryland. I don't expect that he'll still be there in like 5 years. I think by that point, he'll be somewhere else. I just don't expect it to last that long. But I would be surprised if it's just an interim tag for this year and that he's not back next year. Unless things are a disaster, and I don't anticipate that being the case, they'll bring him back next year. And they've got tons of players coming back next year, even though a lot of them do graduate. They'll still have plenty of talent for him to work with.
Yeah, on content and just phenomenal. Love it. But maybe it's the Galaxy brain in me and the Homer in me. The more I thought about it, like when it originally, I was like, yeah, why not Benson? I was at the pod with Chris and in the DMs. If you're Tillman, this is really a smart move because you don't get used as leverage for other assistants so they can just re-up their contracts. You maybe did one or two feelers to maybe some people you really wanted, but when you think about it, Benson gets you instant credibility in your locker room because your defensive unit obviously got a lot of respect for him. It's your biggest rival, and just sometimes two meetings in a year when they play in the Big Ten. Your offensive players, I'm sure, see things in Hopkins' offense that they respected, and he knows the state, he knows the Big Ten, he knows Maryland recruiting, and given it's kind of not ideal situation where your offensive coordinator of 6 or 7 years leaves, on the eve of the season. Great job getting a replacement of this caliber that quickly, and like I said, didn't need to do that long of a search. It felt like it was only a week or 10 days, and bang, they got Benson. So good job by Tillman, I thought. And then you're right, Jake. Yeah, they're kind of like Miami in the 80s. So whoever's sitting in that chair is going to look good. Maybe you could run the offense, and we'd be give the ball to Logan, and we would look great. But I think it does give Maryland, just shows you just how solid of a program they are. They can just put in Benson. And just real quick before I let you guys, I don't want to hammer away here, but if you're Benson, this is great. Yeah, through no fault of your own, you're no longer with the school that you graduated from and you've had a lot of success, and you kind of go from your ex to the girl that your ex hates. It was phenomenal. So shout out to Benson. I'm really happy for him. And any Hopkins fan that's sour about this, get over it. It wasn't his fault. It's not like he left it. It's not like he left the school. So.
And one thing I think that's Adam mentioned, he doesn't see him being there longer than 5 years. For whatever reason, he didn't seem to get much traction for head coaching jobs, and maybe that was because he had coached with one guy in Petro for so long. You kind of get attached to that kind of name. Maybe he wasn't interested. I don't know. That's a possibility. But he didn't get much traction. Maybe going to a new job, a different place, kind of sort of stretching your wings a bit, just proving yourself in a different situation. Maybe that will get him, if he wants a head coaching job, maybe that will get him more looks and more offers. Because I certainly think he's more than qualified and proven himself to be a head coach somewhere based on what he's done over the last 10 plus years.
Oh, that's a great point. I think maybe. Sorry, Adam, go ahead, please.
I was just going to quickly say, I'm pretty sure he was in the mix for the UMBC job when that opened up a few years ago. That ultimately went to Ryan Moran. He was an assistant there 10 years ago or something, 15 years ago, for a year or two. But that is the only job that I ever heard his name mentioned in. So it's still a relevant point. I thought that was worth mentioning.
No, that's a good note, Jake. And I think Hopkins' lack of postseason success relative to what they're expected to get, relative to Maryland, is maybe can play a bit of a role there. Adam, you pointed out Connery did a great job when he was at Maryland, but wasn't there that long, and he gets a Big Ten job. Warren, another example, moves over to Georgetown. I think you're Benson. You stay there 2 or 3 years, but those 2 or 3 Final Fours and maybe 1 or 2 championships, and if a Big Ten job opens up, and suddenly you're like at the top of the resume pile. So I think it's a win-win situation, and I think the interim tag is, Adam, as you pointed out, it's like in case of emergency. If this is a total disaster, then we was just like we had to get somebody that looked like good at the time, and everybody can move in their own ways after the season. But I doubt it's going to be a disaster. Speaking of potential disasters, what's going on with the Ivy League? But we'll talk about in particular our favorite face-off man. Great transition, right? Our favorite face-off man, TD Erlin. A lot of things are in the air right now. We've saw that he's recently on, was it post-game podcast? I don't want to mess up their name, and a couple of articles in U.S. Lacrosse Magazine that looks like potentially he'll be going to Denver if Yale doesn't have a season this year, along with the Ivy League. But didn't know if you guys had some initial thoughts, and we'll get to a meme after some initial discussion.
No, let's start with the meme.
Oh, start with the meme. Even better. So that blew
Let's get the meme out of the way. So I posted that meme based on the bench warmers scene where they try and bring in like a 45-year-old dude to play baseball for a Little League team. Is it a Little League team? I don't remember. Anyway. And he hands the coach his birth certificate, and it just says, "I am 12" on it in crayon. So I thought that fit perfectly for the situation, because quite literally, now that we know that TD doesn't expect to be on campus in Denver until March, he's going to parachute in. He's going to get off the bus when they're playing Villanova or Georgetown or something in a Denver uniform, just literally having hot off the plane from New Haven or from Central New York, wherever he is right now. And the refs are going to be like, "Are you sure you're a Denver student?" That doesn't seem accurate at all. Long story short, he ended up liking the meme, so I feel validated that it was a good meme.
That's wonderful. I won't lie. I'm Jake. I'll let you go in. I do need a photo of Erlin coming off of Tierney's jet, in the University of Denver lacrosse jet, and what are those Michael Irvin circa mid-90s mink coats? That'd be great. As he goes into his first game against a Big East schedule.
If you're the first team on their schedule, how do you not just mess with the flights? Fuel or something. Oh, sorry, can't take off.
Pilot's orders.
It's we're really getting into the thick of things in our season, having a good start. Oh, TD Erlin's up next, out of nowhere.
Kevin Warren has definitely hired a tail to drive behind TD all year long, watching his every move, trying to catch any NCAA violations or anything like that. He needs to hire a PI if he has any chance of winning that conference.
So essentially, where we are right now, nothing's official. He hasn't actually.
Seriously, we need to clarify this. He has not transferred to Denver.
Yeah.
He's not he said he planned on it if the Ivy League doesn't play, which seems like that's what's going to happen at this point, that the Ivy League won't play. But no, even on that podcast, he said that if the Ivy League doesn't play, Denver is where I hope to be. Not Denver is where I will be. Not I'm literally a Denver student right now. Just that Denver is where I hope to be. That's some of the reactions TD Erlin transfer to Denver. No, he didn't. That didn't happen. Maybe he will. Probably he will. I'm guessing. But no, he's not a Denver player yet. He's not a Denver student. Pretty sure he's still enrolled at Yale, or maybe he hasn't, or because he was waiting to enroll when they had word that there was a season that was going to happen, and the Ivy League's dragging their feet. So maybe he isn't enrolled at Yale yet. But either way, he's not at Denver yet.
There's a lot of uncertainty about like how it could possibly work. Because what we're hearing is that he wants to go to Denver, and that there's some ability for him to take classes at Denver that go towards his Yale degree, which seems completely insane. But apparently it's a thing that he's figured out. Like, good for him. Like, if you find that loophole, you absolutely use it. But like, it's completely, totally nuts.
Yale, the University of Phoenix of the Ivy League. So they fit into your life. It's a good way to look. But I guess we can make this kind of like a little Ivy discussion as well. It would be hilarious if after Princeton essentially told Michael Towers to get out of there, and some of their players, like, looks like men and women, like this has been in U.S. Lacrosse magazine, that they've taken the semester off. If they at the last second choose to have a season, and you got to believe it's just like they're just an organization bent on destroying Princeton lacrosse in their potential resurgence last year. But that's why everything is in limbo, because Ivy dropped that statement about a week and a half ago, which really didn't say anything. And so they still haven't made a decision yet on whether or not they're going to have a spring semester. But when I was talking with Chris on our show over the weekend, I was like, I think at the end you got to think of it as like it is canceled, because winter was canceled, fall was canceled. So it's just like what's going to occur for them to have a season. That's how I think of it now. The status quo is like there is no season, and maybe something changes if they decide to have like a small conference only thing in late March. Before we got on, the NESAC put out a tweet that they essentially will have a shortened season, conference only, starting in late March, early April. So, the Ivy thinks about doing that. They really only need like 6 weekends. You can kind of do, post St. Patrick's Day into April, and if the numbers are favorable, they have a season. And probably, what do you think? If the Ivy only, like, we'll talk about the schedules later, but if it's Ivy only games, like, we potentially have one team, maybe two, get into the tournament. So if that happens, that's why TD's leaving his options open. And shout out to him. Players don't have leverage once you become a college athlete. Like, the schools essentially have the control. So shout out to him for using whatever leverage he has to get to Yale and potentially play at another school and still get his degree. So we're all in favor of player empowerment at College CROSSECAST. Moving forward, or unless you guys had any last thoughts about TD or the Ivy.
Ivy's, it's not happening. I don't know what the situation is that makes it, I don't want to say worth it. I don't know what the situation is where the liability for the Ivy League is just not too high, or where the risk is not too high for them to play. But I don't think it's not out there. I don't see it being out there. Things are worse now than they were albeit getting better over the last couple weeks, which is encouraging, even without the vaccine, playing its part. But it's good, and bodes well, for a season, is that we're starting the season on, a downward trend as opposed to because it looked like a couple weeks ago that we'd be starting the season and cases were just going to be going up and up and up and up. And, they've been going down. I think today, the 7-week average, or today was its lowest since November 12th, before the holidays, which is good. But things are still, as far as the numbers go, worse than they were in September or August. And the Ivy League in August and September said they weren't going to play. So I just, wherever the numbers are, or whatever the scenario is that the Ivy League decides makes it they feel that playing is something they want to do, I don't see it happening. I just don't see that, world existing, which is fine. I mean, like, there's arguments in favor of playing and there's arguments against playing. It's not obvious answer in either direction. I don't blame them for making it. Sucks for the athletes. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I feel bad for them, and that's disappointing. And there's tons of benefits to college athletics in a number of ways, and it sucks if the Ivy athletes lose essentially 2 years of their college careers that they a lot of them won't get back. But just make a decision. Like if it's, you shouldn't have the most famous Ivy League athlete coming out and being like, yeah, I'm gonna be probably transferring in like a month and a half if the Ivy League doesn't play, which I don't think they're going to play. You can't have that happening. Like if your stance is like being in favor of athlete welfare and safety, well then the good thing for the general welfare of the athlete is to not leave them hanging in the dark for and I know these decisions are hard. I know, but I just can't imagine that it's like a week by week thing. Like you're just following like, oh, it got better this week, we're gonna play. No, it got worse this week, we're not gonna play. Like I just can't imagine that being the situation. Whatever their decision is, I imagine has been made or has been leading that way for a while. In which case, just make the decision.
We've heard some theories floated that maybe like Cornell or like one or two of the Ivy League teams might try and go rogue and like play on their own. But
good luck.
Even if they somehow pull that off, who are they going to play? What teams are they going to play?
Do it and be
like
just do it and be legends. Just play the New York schools. That'd be wonderful.
They're not. These New York schools have their schedules already. Like Cornell can't just drop into the season in March and like
it's a bunch of D2
game against Hobart.
It's a bunch of D2 teams in a home and home versus Hobart and Siena. There you go. Let's get TD on the field. I think I guess we can just go right into our general discussion of schedules. Like, shout out to Chris, writes on his own right now for the site relaxlacrosseblog.com, has the lacrosse preseason matrix. Got about 20 schools who have released schedules. None of the major teams from the Big Ten or ACC have released their schedules yet, but you can kind of piece together some games from some of the releases. Oh, actually, Duke released theirs. Forgive me. So, initial thoughts of the schedules. How do you guys feel about the conference-only schedules for a lot of the pretty much most of the conferences? I know the ACC does have some ambitious plans for out-of-conference games. So shout out to Utah. They're going to be playing at the Carrier Dome just before Mother's Day and Selection Sunday. So initial thoughts on schedules and, any surprises you've seen?
SoCon is everywhere, huh? Like Utah and Air Force. Utah's not in the SoCon, but they've become like an honorary member almost, along with some other like SoCon is just scheduling anybody who will have them, and that's it's like business as usual for them. Jacksonville is having a normal schedule. Which team was it scheduled like 15 or 16 games, like more games than usual? Was it Mercer? I think it was Mercer.
Mercer has a healthy schedule, yeah.
So I think part of that is that just the philosophies are different. Like the way that they're approaching the pandemic is just fundamentally different from the Northeast schools. But another part is that they could be scheduling all these games with the assumption that like half of them are going to get canceled. So if you schedule 15 games and like 7 games get canceled, you still have a decent 8-game schedule. That's like, it's still like it's a season. It's not like anybody's version of an ideal season, but it's still a season. So I guess from that standpoint, it makes some sense. And maybe they'll end up looking really smart come April and May if they scheduled like 15 games and a bunch of them get canceled, that they still were able to salvage some sort of season. Whereas like the MAC, I think they're just having a 7-game conference only schedule. And if half of those games get canceled, you don't have a season, right? You have like 3 games. that's not a seat. I mean, that's cool. I guess you get to get your guys out in the field feeling like they're playing, but it's not an actual season. So maybe it is smart to schedule way more games than you think is possible.
Yeah, I think Bellarmine I think has 16 games this season, and Mercer's got 13. So yeah, definitely a load of schedule.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, maybe that's the idea. Maybe that works. I still think, like, on the one hand, we should have waited. Like, I still think pushing things back, like, I think the Big Ten's going to start February 14th. I think Syracuse might start, like, the 20th or something like that. Like, I feel like pushing it back, like, those to that, kind of a date, with, the way things are, trending down a bit better. Like things like college basketball, I think has seen a bit fewer postponements in the last, week or so. Like there was a time there where it was like everything was getting postponed, and now they're getting, I think, a bit better. Like there's a bit fewer postponements. Things seem to be getting a bit improved. I feel like if they had, teams had waited. But then maybe the view of the ACC schools is, well, hey, if our non-con if we play our non-con early, if we schedule it early, it kind of, this is something like Adam said, and it gets canceled, well then okay, we'll still have our, non-con schedule, and then maybe they can throw in, if games get canceled, maybe they can throw in, 2 more conference games, like in a midweek or something like that. It's a lot. They can, if they want more games, kind of to get to where the Big Ten seems to be at, like 10, maybe that they can do that, and then maybe that's a way of, making things easier, is that you play your, non-con games or this weekend or the weekend after that. If they get postponed, oh well. But if by the time, March comes around, there's fewer postponements, well then we can still get in our full conference schedule, and you can, then you'll have the ability to be a bit more flexible from there. Maybe that's the viewpoint. I can kind of see that as making some sense, but still, it was a bit wild to see Duke release their schedule and be like, that's the same schedule Duke plays every year.
My buddy did go to Florida for Thanksgiving, and he did report that. He's like, coming from Philly, just Drew noted, Adam, the definitely dramatic change from life in, the Northeast. Like, they're definitely pretty much back to normal in a good amount of the areas in the South. So it does translate that their teams, going forward with their seasons. Before we get into our top 20, I mean, kind of bandied these about in our DMs, I guess we kind of make this public. Have initial thoughts on, like, if you're the NCAA tournament selection committee, how they may go forward in terms of, like, making out the brackets. I'll give you guys a chance to think. I'll throw out my thoughts and concerns. I was like, we always kind of make a joke that, the tournament's a little bit of a racket, because, like, if you're in one of the power conferences, like, as long as the way you schedule it, if you just kind of keep your losses within the teams that are already in top 20, you'll have a better chance of making it into the tournament. A lot of the Big Ten ACC teams are going to make a good amount of the top 20 rankings. Like, if they're only playing each other, or maybe 1 or 2 out of conference games, it's going to be kind of difficult for, like, the CAA or the Patriot League or other teams to get multiple teams into their tournament. But I think, like, from predicting going forward, like, I think, a lot of the mid-major conferences, probably like one team only, whoever wins the conference crown and the AQ. And I think it'll be a healthy season for the Big Ten and ACC teams, because as long as whatever non-conference games they have, they don't lose those games, and the only games they lose are to, conference opponents. If you have an RPI and whatever, like, you're going to have a pretty high one, because, most of the teams are already starting in the top 20 or right outside the top 20. So there's a little bit of my concerns that may even have, I mean, wouldn't mind seeing a bunch of power teams play each other in the tournament, but like I said, it may be difficult for some of the other conferences to have other teams that get a chance to get a bid. So, if you guys had thoughts or maybe ideas for what the selection committee may bandy about in a few months.
Eye test. It's got to be the eye test. I mean, like, no, for real. they just got to get the committee in a room, and they've got to throw the stats. I mean, I'm a huge statistics, metrics, numbers person. Like, I think in general, it should go by the numbers. But if any year they're going to do it, they should just huddle in a room and pick the 8 teams they think would make for like the best tournament. Just the teams that they think, based on what they've seen, are the best teams. Don't use RPI. Don't use strength of schedule. I don't even know if there are any metrics that are going to apply, given the disparities that Safe you mentioned in the scheduling. It's going to be such chaos. I think normally doing it by the eye test, I think, is inherently unfair. But given the craziness this year with the schedules, it might be the most fair way to do it. Is just to, they're the auto bids, and then for the however many at-large slots they did this year, it's still unclear if they're going to do a full-size tournament or not. Just like pick who you want. Pick the teams you think are the best, who would make for the best tournament, create the best product on the field and for TV audiences. Like, I would not mind if they just sort of just winged it and did it that way.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I asked the boys over at Lacrosse Reference how the RPI would shake out between something like Duke's schedule and the Big Ten schedule, and he said it would disproportionately hurt the Big Ten, because kind of in the way of because their losses are all to each other. If your opponents are only because part of RPI is your opponent's record, which that's dumb way of kind of doing it is just record without context. But because your opponent's record, when you're yes, a win kind of helps you, but also it hurts your opponent's. It hurts the team you're playing record, So you're kind of hurting yourself in a way as far as the RPI goes when you're doing that kind of thing. And then strength of schedule, if you're playing that kind of record, doesn't necessarily help either. There are some different ones. I think strength of record is a good one that you may want to. Maybe they could try and use. Maybe they could work, something like that into it. But yeah, I think you kind of got to go with the eye test. Or look, maybe it'll work itself out. He mentioned, the RPI would put them at about for some teams it would put them, the Big Ten would put them around what the bubble cutoff would normally be. And if the Ivy League isn't playing, well, there goes 2 to 3 NCAA tournament teams right there, and the Big Ten would probably get those spots. So it would open things up, a bit more. But still, yeah, I don't see how you really use strength of schedule when the intent of strength of schedule is to reward you for scheduling good teams. Well, you're trying to schedule teams that you can, safely play games, that's the number one consideration right now. Or you're playing conference only schedule, in which case, yeah. So, yeah, I think you gotta go with the eye test. I think that's the other. Maybe you can, to some degree, consider something like strength of record. Maybe you can consider RPI a bit. Maybe to, for maybe seeding, I suppose. But for the tournament itself, yeah, I think the eye test has to just take outsized implication. Just pick who you think is the best team, and then justify it. Tell us why. But that's what I think you have to do. But it would be nice for them to let us know. But this is the NCAA.
Exactly. Moving on to our top 20 rundown. Jake, I don't know if you have a second, if you want to kind of run point. You did a great job on that post, kind of outlined our top 20. But
absolutely. And then we're going to devote about 2 minutes to each team. So this is going to be a kind of a rapid fire, just our thoughts on each team. So hopefully, we can limit this about 40 minutes, no more than 2 minutes on each team. First thing off the top of your head, our thoughts, kind of try and surmise as, efficiently as we can what we view of our college cross top 20. I've got the timer, and so we are going to get started, and we're going with number 20, Lehigh.
Bring back a lot of guys from last year. They were 5-1 last year. Solid team. John Crawley, my boy, offensive coordinator. They got Teddy Leggett on defense. Solid team. You're gonna hover around the top 20 all year, I think, and they'll make some noise in the Patriot League tournament.
Yeah, loss of Andy Pettit is tough, but like it's Adam noted, a lot of talent coming back. Big, Connor Gaffney, pretty good face-off guy with 65%. I think that they should be a solid team in the Patriot League. So yeah.
Yeah, the Patriot League, we've got all, as we'll get to the other teams, we have no Patriot League team in the top 10, but then 3, 11 through 20. So I think this could really be a year where it's a bit kind of wide open, and I would not be surprised to see, a Lehigh team that really put up some offense, a year ago. Andrew Pettit losing, going away as a loss, but Tommy Schelling at 33 points in 6 games. He looks like a big stud. Christian Muley, a freshman, at 16 goals. So they were scoring. Their only loss was Virginia, a game they were kind of in, for a bit there. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if this is a team that wins the Patriot League tournament, gets into the NCAA's. I don't think they're far off whatsoever, Army or Loyola, and they are built well from back to front. As Adam mentioned, Teddy Leggett on defense, Anthony Tangradi, really good player as well, and they got offensive top. This is a really balanced team, and I think that's something that could really benefit them as well. Connor Gaffney, an elite face-off guy. So yeah, I think Lehigh is really going to give Army and Loyola everything they can handle in the Patriot League. Next up, we move on to the Big Ten with number 19, the first of 5 Big Ten teams in our top 20, the Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
So every Rutgers fan thinks that they're going to win the championship this year. They think they have the best team of all time in the history of NCAA lacrosse. I think they're going to be good. They have a ton of dudes on offense, and now they bring in Connor Kirst from Villanova, who's a beast, who's a first-team All-American type midfielder. The question for them is on defense, and that's what the question's been with them for the last couple of years. They had really good defenses back in 5 or 6 years ago, but last couple of years it hasn't been there. And I'm not sure that they really get anybody in through the transfer market or through recruiting is going to help them there that much. So that's going to be on the coaching staff to figure out. But offensively, they're going to be good with Cheryl Embiid's back. I'm shocked I said that right in the first try. I'm very proud of myself. Kieran Mullins, Connor Kirst, Tommy Coyne, a great lacrosse name right there. So yeah, I think they'll maybe make the Big Ten tournament. We'll see.
I mean, I think that's a good offense. Like the addition of Connor Kirst, big for the midfield. I'm a big fan of Kieran Mullins for years now, just like we're all fans of Charlie Beatty's. But I think those 3, could have a potent punch for Rutgers. They just couldn't get a face-off though last year for their life. So they definitely need to clean that up going into 2021. But yeah, offensively, they going to put up some points, and as long as everyone stays healthy, and should be at least a fun team to watch. But yeah, if they just can get enough possessions to make a difference is the key. I mean, some of those games last year, just I think it was the Loyola game, right? They lost. They only won one face-off. I think it was 23-24. They lost some. They got to get that better if they're going to make some noise in Big Ten this year.
Out of time. We move on to number 18. Obviously, the way it looks, this team probably won't be playing because it is the Ivy League, but we'll go ahead and list out 2 minutes on them anyway in case the Ivy does change their mind or things trend towards playing. The Penn Quakers.
So obviously the big thing with them is they get Sam Hanley back from his near-death experience with the spleen injury. Assuming he's fine and back to full health, he's a huge difference maker just by himself. They do lose Kyle Gallagher to Notre Dame, so face-offs are a question. But the rest of that team from last year pretty much comes back. They should be, if there is an Ivy League season, they should compete with Cornell and Yale for top 3 slots.
I don't want to overstate the loss of Gallagher, but I mean, I think he was a good part of the reason why they've been such a player the last 2 years in the Ivy. So that is going to be kind of big. I'm going to face off, not diminish a little bit in importance with the shot clock, but having a weapon like that and losing it, and it's going to be a big loss. That article, things about U.S. Lacrosse Magazine on Sam Hanley, like definitely worth your time if you haven't read it. Just really traumatic incident when he almost passed away. So definitely worth your time to read. But if Penn has a season, there'll be team to watch. But I don't think they're going to have one.
Yeah, Hanley and Sean Lully is maybe the best combo attack and midfield that any team has in the country. The question is, Gallagher was so important. Like when in the 6-on-6, they're not a great offense. But in transition, they are as good as anyone and probably better than anyone, especially in the early offense. And so they need to find a way to get better 6-on-6 without Kyle Gallagher if they do play. Next up, we move on back over to the SoCon team. I'm really interested in seeing this year that was very close to a couple near upsets in 2020, the Richmond Spiders.
Dan Chamati's a beast. The defense is going to be good. They got a couple Canadian guys on attack, and Ryan Lanchberry and Richie Connell. Actually, are they both Canadian, or only one of them Canadian? Anyway, they've got two studs down there on attack. The defense is solid. Just a solid team. They don't beat themselves. They always spring an upset. 1 or 2 upsets every year. So I think they're going to win the SoCon, and I think they'll be sort of like a bubble type team. I think there's a reason Chamati's name keeps coming up in all these head coaching discussions. It's because he's a good coach. So I expect that they'll be good this year.
Yeah, I would love to see Richmond kind of make like a Gonzaga-like leap and get into like a Final Four. Chamati's a phenomenal coach. They do kind of play like everyone's favorite underdog, but if you want to be a player in college, Division I college lacrosse, eventually you've got to stop being the cute underdog and be the guy that steals the girl. So they do occasionally steal these great games in the regular season against top teams, and not like they play poorly in the NCAA tournament when they get in or stuff like that. But like I said, you kind of want to see them really kind of make a run, and maybe this is the year. Such a weird year, and have a stable force like Chamati. Like maybe he can punch through this year. So it'll be fun to watch.
The consistency of this program is just remarkable. They won 6 games in their first year as a program, but won the conference tournament to get into the NCAA. Since then, 11 wins, won the regular season title, 11 wins, 12 wins, won the regular season title, 11 wins, won regular season and conference title, got to the NCAA tournament, 10 wins, won the SoCon conference championship, and got to the NCAA tournament, and then they won 4 games at the end of last year. Really impressive program. Now, after Richmond, we go back to the Big Ten, which seems to be the most controversial selection in everybody's top 20, the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays.
All right, might need more than 2 minutes on this one.
Filibuster.
New exciting coaching staff. Peter Milliman did really good things at Cornell. Should inject some energy into the Hopkins program. John Grant Jr. Was just watching his mic'd up video that the team tweeted out earlier today. Really good insight into sort of his coaching style. Very, very different from what I think people expect from a Hopkins team. So I think that's sort of the theme of Hopkins moving forward. They're going to look and feel different. They're going to play different. The offense is going to be different. They're going to have different schemes than what we've been accustomed to over the last 15 or 20 years. They bring back a healthy Joey Epstein. By all accounts, he's as healthy as he's ever been. He was phenomenal as a freshman, the best freshman in the country for my money in 2019, and he was playing really well towards the end of that season, just destroying Maryland twice. He had 9 points on Penn State, 6 points on Notre Dame in the NCAA tournament. Even though Hopkins as an offense couldn't get anything going, he still obliterated his matchup. So they get him back. They bring in Josh Kirsten to play goalie. They finally have a goalie. I think the range of outcomes for Hopkins is pretty big. I think they could finish as good as second in the conference, but I also, I wouldn't be shocked if they finished last in Milliman's first year, as he's sort of setting the tone and starting a culture. So lots up in the air for Hopkins, but it's going to be exciting to watch them. And that's not something that you can say about them every year for the last few years. They've been a frustrating team to watch as a fan, but I'm excited. I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel.
I mean, first off, I'm happy that we had the courage to put Hopkins in the top 20. We didn't listen to the haters. Listen, I was talking with Adam before the show that Jay got on. Like, Millen's first season at Cornell, he took a 5-8 Cornell team to 13-5 and into the NCAA tournament, won the Ivy League tournament, and yeah, but that was kind of not a bad loss to Maryland. That was a stacked Maryland team, but they got to the Elite Eight. So I would love that to happen in Charles Village. But I think some of the losses last year were really bad. But I mean, those were like three of the best teams. Syracuse won the national title, as we all know, and Princeton really bad game. Michael Sowers, and we saw the Chris Gray show that game against North Carolina. Those were three of the top 5 teams in the country, and they didn't play well. I think you point out Adam Kirsten is big. That may be, besides Gallagher and obviously Sowers, like one of the biggest transfers of the offseason. This wasn't a bad team. They lost their best player, or essentially it was on one leg for most of the season, Joey Epstein. So he's coming back, which is a great sight to see. This, Milliman's a good coach, got a couple of transfers. I think 14 is a reasonable spot, and like I said, I'm happy we have the courage of our convictions to stick with it and not put them outside the top 20.
And over into extra time there, I would say I think the benefit for them is that this is a year zero. If you follow college football, you might have heard that term. This is a wash essentially with the pandemic, with them not getting the new staff not getting to see their players for up until recently. Anything that if they're bad, okay, you're not like it doesn't. The clock doesn't start for Hopkins with Pierre Millen until next year. So everything you're getting here pretty much is gravy. If they make the tournament, it's awesome. It's a big success. Obviously, it's Hopkins and the standards are high and justifiably so, but I don't there's, as Adam said, the range of outcomes is so wide that anything I think you get is a bonus, and you really don't start the clock of expectations and in terms of getting things back to Final Four level that they believe they should be at until next year. Personally, I think who knows with the way the selection committee works out, but I think they're an NCAA tournament quality team, probably on the back end, but still can be at that level. Come the end of this year. Moving on next, back to the Patriot League at number 15, a team that was really hot at the start of the season before kind of getting a little iffy there before things were canceled, but a intriguing group in 2021, the Army Black Knights.
Wyatt Scuppler, phenomenal goalie last year. Marcus Hudgens, lockdown defender, caused turnover machine on down low. Brendan Nichtern's a really good attackman. They've got really good pieces at most positions. They need some face-off wins. If they can get some face-off wins, they can go really far because they're so solid everywhere else. Joe Alvarici's, got that team playing really well. I think they're going to be good, but the question for them is, can they score enough around Brendan Nichtern, and can they win some more face-offs to make a run at the Patriot League title?
Definitely, Nichtern is a great player, but there are some key losses there. Definitely, I think Jake, you noted their consistency. Speaking of consistency and winning, Army, maybe haven't punch them in for double-digit wins in the regular season. They're consistently a solid team. Sometimes pull off that upset against Syracuse. It's always usually a close-fought game. Last year they were just blowing teams out, before they hit that stumbling block against Marist. And then, lost that game to Syracuse. But yeah, they should be towards the top of the pack. And, the Black Knights are always a solid team, and especially in the Patriot League. So they should be a player.
Yeah, as Adam said, great players. Marcus Hudgens is as good as it gets in the defensive end. Wyatt Schuppler, as good as it gets in goal. Brendan Nichtern, even among a stacked attack group, pretty special himself. I thought they got the midfield with Bobby Absher and Jacob Morin. Absher's a second Dodger for Nichtern, and Morin's a shooter. They have a lot of shooters around Nick Trump, but they lose 2 guys at the attack, Silva and O'Brien, so they'll need some extra attack thrust. If they can get that, I think I might have them as the Patriot League favorite come the end of the season. Now we move on into another intriguing team, the only CAA team to crack the top 20 in our college cross, top 20 to start the year, the UMass Minutemen under Greg Canella for, I think, year 27, 28? He's been there a long time, and they've been a consistently strong team looking to get back to the NCAA tournament this year.
Yeah, I mean, they bring back Jeff Traynor, who's one of the best middies in the country. They bring back Chris Connolly on attack. They beat Yale last year. They were to use Andy Schroff's favorite word, they were a mercurial team last year. They beat Yale, but they lost to Harvard, and they lost by 100 to Army. So,
Army's still scoring goals.
I don't know if they'll be that good. I'm interested to see like which version of UMass we ended up getting, but I think this is an appropriate ranking.
I was with Adam that dreadfully cold, snowy day in Princeton to see Hopkins get a wallop by Michael Sowers. And there was an audible gasp at the halftime announcement when they said UMass was up 11-2 on Yale. Like literally, it was just like everyone.
Like it's a massive flattering. The UMass was destroying them.
It was, yeah. I mean, as you noted, digging the top 20 posts, it was a much more impressive win than it looks in the final score. But they just were dunking on the Bulldogs that first half, and everyone was just shocked in Princeton. So, yeah, they are been a fun team. You know, I think we said that they're probably maybe one of the class in the CAA, but you know, we always love the captain, so we're going to let him give a chance to have a bounce back season this year. But yeah, like the Minutemen, and yeah, it should be a fun team this year. But like I said, that Yale game last year just always sticks in my mind so much. But yeah, you know, Connolly, Tobin, good face-off guy, and Hawkman, and Jeff Traynor. So that's a good return from 2020, and they should be, you know, one of the top teams in CAA, and you know, maybe even win a first-round game in the NCAA tournament.
Now we get into the pretty much blue bloods only from here on in. It's a pretty darn stacked top 12, 13 teams. We start off with the 5th of 5 ACC teams. The ACC gets every team in the top 13. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
So we'll get into transfers later, but Kyle Gallagher is going to be a huge impact for them. They need possessions because they have the worst offense in the ACC. They're the only offense in the ACC that doesn't like terrify you. They have some guys. Pat Cavanaugh's good. Griffin Weston's pretty good. Although I don't know if he's like a guy you build your offense around. As you know, the U.S. Lacrosse Mag preview sort of made it seem like he was that guy. They have guys.
Will York.
Need more possessions. Will York, they're bringing in Sean Leahy from Providence. They're bringing in. They've got a bunch of guys. I don't know if any of them are like killers, you know, like Tewaaraton level type guys. The defense should be fine. Notre Dame should be fine. It's just a question of what their ceiling is. And I think we need to see more from the offense in order for them to reach it.
I mean, I love that Corrigan used the transfer market, like just go to the grocery store and just picked up a face-off guy, got an attachment, Roy York, get another guy in Leahy. So they definitely, you know, not really exciting team the last couple of seasons offensively. So hopefully these additions, and maybe we'll talk about transfers later. But yeah, I think Gallagher maybe the gem of the entire transfer market besides, you know, the biggest name in Sowers. So yeah, Notre Dame, they're coming back.
I like their team. Like they've got a really good offense. Gallagher's as good a face-off guy as there is in the country aside from TD. I think Liam Entenmann's going to be a future stud at goalie. It just feels like in this conference they're showing up they're bringing a knife to a gunfight. Like with the offenses that are in this conference, I'm going to need to see a bit more from what they've got to really feel like they're going to be able to compete and get up to that top echelon with these Duke and Carolina and Syracuse and Virginia. We go back over now to the Big Ten with another really intriguing team, I think, and a team that I feel has a little bit of a, I don't want to say hot seat, but some pressure on them to step up and deliver this year. The Ohio State Buckeyes.
Besides Kirsten, as you mentioned, who's now Hopkins, they bring basically everybody back. Trey LeClaire was having a phenomenal year quietly last year, 26 goals in 7 games. They've got guys at every position. Ryan Tarasenko is the glue guy, as they're called. Really good short stick midi. Jackson Reed, really good Canadian attackman. So they're a good team. I think this is about where they belong. I wouldn't be shocked if they make the Big Ten championship game. Again, sort of similar to Notre Dame. They're a solid team. I just question what their ceiling is. They're gonna have to put it all together. They're gonna really have to sort of take it to the next level. To get out of this pack, this mid 10 to 20 pack. And we'll see. I mean, Nick Myers has done it before. He did it a few years ago in 2017, but he'll have to do it again, I think, if he wants this team to sort of overperform, this ranking.
Yeah, the Buckeyes were pretty good last year. I mean, obviously, it's in perspective because it was the canceled season, but they lost to UMass by 2 and lost to Jeff Teat in the Big Red by 1. That's not a horrible resume. There's no ballot losses, and they had a couple good wins, and they actually beat Notre Dame. I mean, again, Notre Dame wasn't the best team in the ACC, but that was a solid win. I think Trey LeClaire could be. We're talking about dark horses later, but as Adam noted, he was having a great season. Jack Myers also gave 29 points last year, and loss of Kirsten is significant. He's a great goalie for the Buckeyes, but if Myers can fix that and keep his defense, pretty solid. They should be middle of the pack, Big Ten, and potentially even one of the top 2 teams if everything falls right. But it's not like a show me year for Ohio State, but that 2017 glorious 2017 season, gets further back each year that we go on. So you'd like to see a little bit more from the Buckeyes. At least I do. They're kind of like my adopted team, or kind of. This, if you use 2020 as a barometer, they had a pretty decent season, and besides the loss of Kirsten, they bring a lot back. So I think we're going to see good things from Ohio State this year.
We go back one more time to the Patriot League for the first, hopefully, full season of Loyola without Pat Spencer.
Yeah, Rutgers fans, Loyola fans always think they're the best team in the country. They're going to be good. They were good last year. Another quietly good season. But I don't know. They're good at every position. Schaefer came in at goal and was really good last year. They've got McNulty, long pole. They've got some guys on attack in Olmstead and Lindley. They're bringing a pretty good freshman class. I mean, they're good everywhere on the field, but are they great anywhere? I don't know. I look at their roster and it kind of underwhelms me. But Charlie Toomey is such a good coach, and he will get the absolute most out of the talent that they have, to the point where I wouldn't be surprised if they end up making the Final Four. I just, I'm not going to predict that at that point in the season, at this point in the calendar now. But I have confidence in Toomey. I don't know if I have confidence in the roster compared to some of the teams that we have ranked ahead of them.
They're much more competitive than some thought going into the first year without Spencer. That started off with a bad loss to, not bad, but 3-goal loss to Virginia. But then they ran off 4 straight wins, and lost to a pretty good Duke team, 13-10. So to me, it's a phenomenal coach. They don't lose any real key losses from last year. And I think, as Adam noted, they have a second year without Spencer, people get more comfortable in roles that they may not have been used to last season. And I think we should see really good things from the Greyhounds. Like I said, big thing is that they don't lose much from 2020, and they were actually pretty solid in the first year without Spencer. So they'll always be a player in the Patriot League. And I think they'll be like a fringe top 10 team throughout the year.
Into extra time, so I'll just leave you with one thought.
Sorry.
Loyola was 48th in the country in offensive efficiency a year ago. They rode Bailey Savio hard. Their goals came from a bunch of possessions. They were not a very good offense from an efficiency standpoint. I'm going to need to see a lot more from them on that side of the ball. Defensively, they're great. McNulty's great. Cam Wire's a good player. Schaefer and goal is great. I'm going to need to see a lot more on the offensive side if I'm going to project them as a quarterfinal or Final Four team. Now we break into the top 10, and similar to what we said about Penn earlier, who knows if this team will be playing, but if they do, we'll get to see one more year of our good friend Jefferson Teat and a should-be explosive Cornell Big Red offense.
So the big question for them, obviously, is how much Peter Milliman was responsible for their success. It's not going to be easy for a first-time head coach, a 27-year-old and Connor Buchek, to run the program in this under these circumstances. It's a lot for anybody to handle, let alone a 27-year-old first-time coach. By all accounts, he's the man. He's got a handle, but still, roster-wise, the team they're bringing back is phenomenal. And maybe Milliman sort of changed the culture there, and they've got two Cornell guys still on the staff, to the point where it's just going to be continuity. It's going to be business as usual for them, even without their head coach. So if they do play, I do expect they'll be good. I wonder if it might be a little bit. They might need some time, finding their footing, given the inexperience of the coaching staff.
Definitely is going to have maybe some initial growing pains with just a new leader. But from everything we've heard, Busick, it's got the respect of the locker room. But you can't deny the fact that any guy getting his first coaching job, let alone a person under 30, is going to have some challenges. But, and on top of that, you lose some, key players, Cooper Telesco, Connor Fletcher, Brendan Salvatore, and Sam Duggan. So, there's some, significant pieces that you lose, but, our boy, Mr. Jeff Teat, he is coming back. So if they do have a season, he should do well and, be one of the top players. But like you said, we always have questions about the Ivy League team, so I don't want to get my hopes up too high.
Offense, should be electric, but Duggan and Salvatore, as good a rope unit as there was in the country a year ago with those two guys, that would be two tough losses to stomach. Now we move further into the top 10 with a program that continues to be on the rise and was playing as well as anyone in the country at the conclusion of the season a year ago. But we didn't yet get to see them against some of the top squads in the nation. We'll get to see that this year with the Georgetown Hoyas.
Dominant last year, but as Jake said, untested. They didn't really. Best team they played last year was Fairfield. They did score 25. They won 25-12, but we need to see them against elite competition. It's a shame that they were about to play North Carolina last year before the season was canceled, because that would have been an amazing game. If they bring back everybody, they got Gibson Smith, Gibby, our boy. They got Jake Caraway, friend of the pod.
Friend of the pod.
Owen McElroy stepped in goal and was really good. So, they're set. They're just a really good team. We just need to, I'm waiting to see them play a good team.
Warren's got it coming. I mean, we've always said, since we started this whole shebang, Georgetown just, could really be a major player in Division I, just the location, the school, and everything. And last few seasons, he's definitely kind of transformed a program that was kind of lackluster. Obviously, we love Caraway, kind of a dark horse for first or second team All-American. But defensively, they've been solid. Adam, you noted Owen McElroy, good, filling for at goal, but they are a team that last year we felt was a little bit too low, by teams because they would note that their schedule, but they are a solid team. They've been solid for a few years, so it's not just like lightning in a bottle season. Warren seems to be on a run, and I'm excited for to see what the Hoyas are going to do this year.
They're good everywhere. They've got a fantastic offense. Jake Caraway, as Adam said, front of the pod, is as good as it gets. Dylan Watson was a beast. Graham Bundy Jr., a freshman, showed some real promise. Gibson Smith's an All-American. Owen McElroy was great in goal. He's been good for a while. They're good on face-offs. Like, they're good everywhere. The question is kind of, as we said with some teams, is the ceiling as high as some other teams? I think it might be. I'm not gonna, for sure stake my flag on them being a Final Four team. But if you told me Georgetown was playing on Memorial Day right now, I would not be surprised one bit. We move on further with our fourth Big Ten team featured in the top 20. Life after Grant Ament begins for the Penn State Nittany Lions.
So we got chirped hardcore on Twitter for daring to make McElkeep a third-team All-American instead of a second-team All-American.
Yes.
Apparently it was so obvious that he had to be a second-team All-American, even though they just lost Grant Ament. Like, McElkeep is a really, really good player, and he's going to score a lot of goals without Grant Ament. He's still, losing Ament doesn't change the fact that he's an electric shooter from, 12 yards out. But, give me a break. Come on, part of his success was Ament running the offense and getting him the rock. That was part of it. So losing Ament, I think, Penn State drops several slots, and they still got a really good roster everywhere else. But they've got to prove, they can, run with the big dogs without him. And, it's just unproven at this point.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get personal on this show, but I was like, I made a joke earlier. I was offended at the idea that we were anti-McElkeep. Literally, he's a guy that we loved for years, but
I've called him the greatest shooter ever on here.
He's wonderful. We love him. Yeah, since his freshman year. Look at the tweets. I look him up. But the greatest player in program history, arguably one of the top 5 players of the last 20 years, 25 years, is no longer on the team, and he was such a facilitator in front of the pod as well. Grant Ament is not going to be there, and it's not sacrilege to say, a guy who we adore, we're just going to put him third team just so in a preseason, kind of post about our preseason All-Americans. So Penn State, I think we may have to do extra time in soccer, Jake, for Penn State here. They are second only to Syracuse in acting like the Miami Heat circa LeBron James, and how their announcement of all the players that are coming back. Obviously, the biggest fish ended up going pro, but they've got a lot going back. Cambrone is a great coach. They may not have that magic that they had with Ament, but maybe they put something different together and they still become a top 8 team throughout the year and a solid threat to the Final Four. So Penn State deserves to be a top 10 team, and we love their offense. But like I said, without Grant Ament, it's just gonna let's see what they have.
When we did the pod with Grant was big on TJ Malone. He said that TJ was the guy who would, kind of take his role and be kind of the facilitator of that offense. TJ Malone was really good last year. He was third on the team in points. If he's an elite guy, if he's close to an All-American, Penn State is a Final Four team. If he is very good, I think they're probably a bit further down into 9th. I'm going to say he's going to be very good. I think he's a really talented player. He's only a sophomore. I think he's going to be a great player in his career. But I think when you consider the guys that they, of the top 4 or 5 teams, I'm going to say they're going to need him to be, an All-American type guy to break into that kind of tier, which is not out of the question. He's a very good player. But I think, not to put it all on him, but I think his success, how he develops, will be kind of tied into greatly with how good this Penn State team is in 2021. And now we go one more time to the big question of the Ivy League, and was obviously something we've already talked about earlier in the podcast. Number 8 in the country number 7 rather, to start 2021 for us at College Cross, the Yale Bulldogs.
So I guess if we're talking about them hypothetically playing, that means they're going to have TD Ierlan, right? The only way to. Okay. So they still, even with TD, they lose Matt Gaudette. They lost Jackson Morrill to Denver. They lose Lucas Collar to Denver. They're going to be fine. They lose Will Weitzel. Matt Brando is really good. They always have other dudes who just come out of nowhere and are really good somehow. But I think it's the least talented roster they've had in a few years. And Matt Brando's really good, but I don't know if he can do it all the way that Jackson Morrill could and the way that Ben Reeves could before him. We'll find out. I still think they're in the running for an Ivy League title and a Elite Eight type season, but I don't think it's going to be the dominant type Yale team that we're used to seeing from the last few years.
Definitely not. I think they, offensively, noted, Adam, they find guys, but that's big loss to Jackson Morrill is one of the best attackmen in the country. And I think Gaudette as well. I think without TD, you noted that too early post that you had. Without TD, are they top 10, top 15, the top 20? And I think TD erases a lot of deficiencies, carries a lot of burden. He's your best defender. I think we've noted on this pod several times, he's the guy who makes sure that the other team doesn't get the ball after a goal. So he fixes a lot of things and is a great luxury to have. So if they have a season, he's still going to make them be a team that you have to contend with. Whether or not they're going to be that 2018 team, I can't predict that. But whether they even have a season, which we are a little pessimistic about. But if they do have a season and TD gets accustomed to the new rules and he's still as dominant as he's always been, they're going to be a top 10 team. There'll be a team that can fight into the top 10 because Yale's a kind of school that attracts great talent, and they may be getting into kind of that that Maryland mold. They just can kind of plug in players, but they're not there yet. But TD can be kind of that guy that transitions them maybe this year and to get these guys experience. But when you think of that that UMass game last year, that was a kind of a shocker, and maybe this is that kind of portended that they weren't going to be at the elite level that they've been used to. So that, like we said, TD fixes a lot of things. So that game they actually won. They face-off wise, they were 20-6, and he was 11-4 in the first half. So like I said, maybe the wheels are going to fall off, but they weren't the dominant team this year.
The defense was bad last year. TD, to make quick, they have the highest floor of any team outside the top 5 with TD. The ceiling. I'm high on Matt Brando. I think Matt Brando might end up being better than Jackson Morrill at the end of his career. Whether he's better than Big Ben Reeves, I'm not quite sure. He could be close though. He's a great athlete, great player. TD. The floor with TD is this. They're not going to get lower than this, but I don't know if they get much higher either. Now we get into potentially TD Ierlan's destination at some point during this year. Big Bill Tierney has reloaded like he never has before, and Denver figures to be back in the conversation for a trip to the Final Four come Memorial Day.
So Jackson Morrill fits into this offense like a glove. What they've really needed is an ex-attackman. to run things from behind the net and get the rock to Ethan Walker so that Ethan Walker can just be like a spot-up wing shooter and just shred the net from 8 yards out. And that's exactly what they got. That offense is going to be a machine under Matt Brown. If they bring in TD, it's just icing on the cake. They already have a good face-off guy in Alex Stathakis. So if they're bringing TD, they're going to get a gazillion possessions. Brown and Tierney are not going to let them go to waste. They should be fine defensively. Jack Hanna is a beast midfielder. A pretty complete team that, in my eyes, is pushing for a Final Four berth, especially with TD Erlin.
Tierney, like Corrigan, was using the transfer market like a grocery and getting a lot, and he may get one of the biggest gems this year if Yale doesn't have a season and he snags TD. Yeah, they were kind of like a kind of run-of-the-mill average team at the end of 2020, and they kind of transformed themselves potentially into a top 5 team, especially if they get TD. So, Ethan Walker, a little bit of a bounce back season for him, but yeah, like if they can put it together, but right now I still think Georgetown's the class of the Big East, but Tierney's definitely got reloaded in the off season, so the Pioneers are going to be definitely a threat to win the Big East title this year.
They're top notch on offense. They're going to be as good as it gets. Especially with Morrill. Lucas Collar's really good as well. They're really young on defense though, and I don't quite know if they have the depth of some of the other top teams. But if you bring in TD Erlin, as we said, he's the great eraser, and they'll move up quite a bit. Now we move into the top 5, maybe as strong a top 5 as there's been in college lacrosse in a long time. You can make credible arguments for pretty much any one of these teams being the number 1 team in the country. If you told me any one of these teams won the national title come Memorial Day, I would not be surprised at all. We start with a slew of ACC teams in this top 5, with number 5, the Virginia Cavaliers.
So, they don't really have a weakness. They're going to be excellent on offense. They're super deep. They have like 100 midfielders, especially with Doc coming back. They got Bertrand coming in from Merrimack, and we'll see if he's as good as Michael Krause. I don't think he's going to be an exact replacement, but he should help them on the left side there. They were good on defense. They've been good on defense the last 2 years, surprisingly. Peter LaSalle is a good face-off guy. I don't know if they have the ceiling of some of the teams we'll get to, but I think they are going to be very good. I think they're going to be in the tournament, and I would not be surprised if they're in another Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, Virginia really put it together 2 years ago in 2019, and we've always felt like they could control like the turnovers and stuff like that. Like Tiffany would have something good at UVA, and still technically the reigning champs. So deserve to be in the top 5. They have a loaded roster. They're a team that like can beat you in all sorts of ways, and they should be one of the best teams in a loaded ACC. It's not really much to say about UVA. They're going to be a really good team this year. Maybe it's not top team in the country, but it's definitely top 5, top 7 team.
Yeah, I have some just questions on the maybe construction of the offense with, Matt Moore is the guy, and I think he was the guy last year, but Michael Krause still did a lot of the ball handling and a lot of the setting up, and Bertrand, I don't know if he quite fits in that role. And I'm curious to see Doc Sakin, after not really being in lacrosse shape or picking up a lacrosse stick for about 10 months or so, but they're just so talented. They're as talented as anyone. And as Adam said, no weakness. They're going to be a tough out. We continue in the ACC with the team that made probably the biggest improvement from 2019 to 2020, a team we have been waiting on to kind of get back to the upper echelons of the sport in 2020. They went out and got Chris Gray and did just that. The North Carolina Tar Heels are number 4 in the College Cross top 20.
Electric offense led by Chris Gray. You've got a ton of other dudes, and now they bring in Connor McCarthy, midfielder from Princeton, who Faith mentioned that we went to the Hopkins-Princeton game last year. He obliterated Hopkins, dodging from up top. He was literally just blow by guys. He's really athletic. I'd never seen him play in person before. But he torched Hopkins for like 5 goals. He brings another dimension for them from the midfield, stacked midfield. Some questions on defense, but they've got guys there. Will Bowen. They've got a good rope unit, Connor Marr, and a couple other guys. So they're going to be good, and they're going to score in bunches.
Yeah, we bought a lot of Chris Gray stock when he transferred out of BU, and it was just a joy to see that it really hit. They were one of the most fun teams to watch offensively. They're so fluid. Gray, threat to score, but equally adept at finding open people or people who don't even realize they are open. He has such great vision. It's hard to say, a dark horse for the Tuaretin when he's already a top 3 player, but like Gray and what North Carolina potentially can do this year, they were going to be a really fun team. And, it's great to see Bresci, got the title in 2016, kind of, a little bit of 500 seasons, and, good to see the big guy dropping, a lot of points every game, and they're just a really fun, athletic, fast team to watch, and really exciting team to watch. So hopefully, a lot of good things for the Tar Heels this year.
They are going to be on offense. I mean, they've got one of the 3 best attackmen in the country. They might have the best midfield, like top to bottom. Like they're so big and athletic. Tanner Cook's a big dude who can score. You have McCarthy who can blow by guys. Justin Anderson. William Perry, they can go really kind of run 2 real strong, solid midfield units. Offensively, they're going to be as good as anyone. Only real question that precluded me from putting them in the top 3, goaltending. Caton Johnson only saved 46% last year, and that was not against the most stacked set of competition. That's going to need to be something that improves if the Tar Heels are going to win the national championship come May. Now we continue with the greatest midfield in the history of lacrosse, the defending national champions. I can't believe you ranked them number 3. I'm surprised we didn't get quite as much heat for that as I anticipated. Anyhow, it is the Syracuse Orange who check in at number 3 in the College Cross Top 20.
I don't know. Yes, they're going to be really good. Yes, they have a great midfield, okay? I'm curious to see how they use Owen Hiltz, the Canadian attackman that they got coming in. If he starts right away, or if he's sort of like a 4th attackman behind Stephen Rafis, who is not suspended, and Griffin Cook. They were very good last year, but also a bit untested. They beat Hopkins, obviously, but Hopkins wasn't good last year. They snuck by Army thanks to a heroic performance by Drake Porter in net. But the rest of their schedule, Colgate, Binghamton, Hobart, not a murderer's row. So very good. They'll compete for an ACC title. They'll compete for a Final Four berth. Another team that doesn't have too many weaknesses, if any. They should be okay on defense with Kennedy and Durst and Di Pietro and some of those other guys. They're good on face-offs. Slop and Varela, that was a solid tandem. So they're going to be very good. Yeah.
Greatest team of all time returns. Like I said, when I earlier, Syracuse definitely took their announcements of all the players coming back to run it back the next year, coming season to a whole new level, which was great to see in terms of they're really hyped for 2021. They're pretty good. I mean, Trimboli was our preseason first team midfield, and I think he leads a midfield line that's definitely formidable. Drake Porter, really solid at goal, and I think Syracuse is going to be potentially a problem for Duke. I think Desko has a pretty good record against Danowski, so I think he has got a pretty talented squad, and they should be one of the teams that really challenge the Blue Devils besides North Carolina for the crown. So really stacked ACC top tier team. So.
Yeah, there's not much to say. Like, Hughes fans want you to say everything possible, but there's not really much to say. They got
You're good, you know.
They got a great midfield. They seem good on defense. Got a great goalie, good face-offs. They're a really good team. They're a high floor team, and there's not much to say about a high floor team. The ceiling, I'm not saying it's low. I'm just kind of curious to see where it is because they don't have on the midfield. They're stacked, but on the attack, they don't have the dudes that Duke or Maryland do, or Carolina, or maybe even UVA. So that's just something that's curious to me. But as far as like the team that there's like the least chance that anything goes wrong, it's them. Now we get into the top two. I personally did consider potentially flip-flopping these teams, but it did wind up with a unanimous number one and a bit of tightening at 2 and 3. But this is a heck of a twosome to start. At number 2, the Maryland Terrapins.
I'll let Jake do most of the talking here, but they got a gazillion guys on offense, bringing in Eric Holden, who was one of the best players in the country last year. Bringing in Griffin Brown. They bring in Burlace, transfer from Yale, or the decommitment from Yale. Offensively, no questions with them whatsoever, even with the new coordinator. Defensively, they haven't been the Maryland defenses of old without Kevin Conry. I think they'll be fine. Like, I'm not extremely worried about their defense. I just, to win a national championship, I think they're going to have to be better on that end, and remains to be seen if that's going to happen.
Yeah, Jared, Logan, and Anthony are a potent group in terms of offense. I think they haven't been as dominant defensively as you noted, Adam, but they definitely still can put the ball in the back of the net last year. A little bit, they were 4-1, right? 5-1, sorry. But that early season game against Richmond was a little bit of nail biter for a lot of Terps fans, and the season ended shortly thereafter. But they also had that one goal loss for Villanova. So, I think if everyone wanted to put Maryland as their number one team, it's wouldn't be outlandish, but yeah, I felt really comfortable making them number 2 team. I think they have a loaded lineup, and the addition of Benson should keep the bus rolling exactly where it should go. So.
Offensively, I think maybe this is a bit of a homerish view. I know everyone kind of penciled in Duke as far as that best top 6. I think Maryland's got the best top 6 in the country. Just as far as starting goes, I don't think you beat Jared Bernhardt, who's a second-team All-American, Logan Wisnowskis, who's a second-team All-American, at least in our view, Anthony DeMeo, who's one of the 6 or 7 best offensive midfielders in the country, Bubba Fairman, who I think is going to be better this year. They had him do a lot, give him a lot of responsibility aside from just scoring a year ago. He didn't shoot well. I do think they'll need him to shoot a bit better. But then you bring in, you throw in Eric Holden to this mix, and they've got 3 of the top 20 from a year ago in points per game. You throw in Holden, additionally Griffin Brown, and they've got 3 of the top 20 and 4 of the top 25 in goals per game from a year ago. And that's going to be, especially on the extra man, that's going to be just you foul them, they're putting the ball in the back of your net. And then the depth. I think they're low-key really deep with what they've got. Daniel Maltz had 18 points in 6 games as a freshman and doesn't have a spot on the starting 6, with Jared Bernhardt coming back. Jack Brennan had 6 goals. They had a good, solid, deep team that just gets deeper now with bringing back Jared Bernhardt and bringing in 2 transfers. Defensively, yeah, I think there are some questions there, but I think, Logan McNaney looked solid in goal as a freshman. He's super talented. I think not that defense doesn't matter, I'm going to say, but I think it doesn't matter as much as it once did. I think they need to be better, but I don't think they need to be the Maryland defenses of old to win a national championship in a shot clock era. I think it's an offensive game, and I think they might have the best offense in the country. But if they don't, it will probably be second to this team. Everybody's number one, unanimous pretty much across the board, and it's not difficult to see why. With all they've brought in, John Donowski pretty much raided the grocery store. Um, it's number one going into 2020 with great hype. Also comes though great expectations, and a lot of pressure to make good on this very unique team. Number one, the Duke Blue Devils.
Keep something in mind here. Mike Sowers had Princeton as a top 5 team last year. Like easy top 5, possibly top 3 team last year. Now he's at Duke, which, with all due respect to Princeton, they were a good team last year. They had other guys. But Duke is a more talented team than Princeton was last year. So now you're bringing in a guy who put the team on his back, though, at Princeton, and you're putting him next to Brendan O'Neill and Dyson Williams and the Robertson brothers, Joey Manown and Owen Caputo, and they're just disgustingly loaded. They might start slow and have some chemistry issues early on as they sort of tinker with the lineups, figure out the right configurations. But I think by the end of the year, they'll be the best team in the country.
Yeah, solid defense. I know we put JT Giles Harris on second team and got some comments about that, but he's still one of the premier defensemen.
Yeah, we thought he was the 4th best defenseman in the country. Sorry.
Yeah, please forgive us. But offensively, they could really be onto something this year with Sowers. So, well deserved for the preseason rankings. They don't really mean as much once the game starts, but there's a lot of reason to put them number one in the country. They're just absolutely stacked. Should be a good season for the Blue Devils.
Yeah, and we talked about the offense, and we didn't even mention what was the number one weakness on Duke a year ago. Goalie. Who'd they go and get? Oh, the best goalie in the country. They needed an ex-attackman. They got the best ex-attackman. They needed a number one goalie. They went out and got the best, or one of the 2 or 3 best goalies in the country. I think there is a question, of chemistry, of utility, of, how much is too much, to some degree? Like, at what point do you just kind of hit your ceiling as far as what you're like? Like, at some point, you just kind of tap out as an offense to some degree. It's kind of like Penn State, I think, in 2019, like, they were the best offense in the country, but also, like, how much better were they than Yale in that, Final Four, to the point that it's a big advantage. But they are ludicrously stacked. They don't appear to have any weakness. And it will be the big. I'm not going to say it will be the biggest shock if they don't win the national championship, because there's so many other great teams. But it will be the biggest shock if they aren't in the Final Four in 2021.
So, are we starting the reverse jinx now, or I'm all for it.
Oh, look, I'll get, if they don't make the Final Four, I'll get jokes off. I mean,
yeah, we should start the reverse jinx now. Greatest team ever, really.
We talked Fire Desco. If John Donowski can't make the Final Four with this team, that pack will be in the air.
Fire Dano. Yeah, it's wonderful. So that's our top 20 rundown. Jake, again, great job on the preseason posts. Too early, and putting together our top 20 for the preseason 2021 season. Moving on, I think we're going to move our Final Four predictions a little bit lower on, but let's start with some player predictions. Do you guys have a Tewaaraton winner in mind, and would you mind sharing it?
Sowers is the obvious candidate. I think he'll probably win the Tewaaraton, but that's no fun to pick the obvious person. So my dark horse pick is Jake Caraway from Georgetown. He's a phenomenal player, excellent shooter, does a little bit of everything. Georgetown's going to be good. They're going to have a good offense, going to have opportunities to score for a lot of stats on the board. Senior coming back for his last year. I think he'll be in the mix for the award by the end of the year. And then my homer pick, of course, is Joey Epstein because he's, the man. But maybe I'll save that for his senior or post-grad year. But I do think people need to remember that he's very good because a lot of people don't seem to remember, and it's really annoying. Okay, so watch out for Joey Epstein. Michael Sauer's going to win the Tomorrow. Jake Caraway is probably not going to win the Tomorrow, but he's a name that people need to know. So.
It's Michael Sowers, but if you don't got to do Michael Sowers, it's a bit homer, but it's also not. He's really good. I think there's another level to Jared Bernhardt, and he's been awesome. He's been an All-American every year. I think he's got the quickest first step in the game. He's a phenomenal athlete. I've said it a lot of times. I don't think he quite realizes how good he is. I think he sometimes is deferential when he could just just take that thing to the rack and score. Because you can do it. Because no one can stay in front of him when he really gets going. I think he kind of plays himself into being covered because he's not often as aggressive. And look, part of it is he's got a great offense around him. But I think he kind of plays himself into being covered a bit sometimes. So, I'm going to say I think there's another level that he can hit. And by all accounts, he's in the best shape he's been in since he's been at Maryland. He's been working on for the last, 3 or 4 months, even though he wasn't with the team. Pretty much all lacrosse. He got, once he realized football was going to happen, he pretty much got back in that mindset. So if I'm not going to go with Sowers, I think there is a level that Jared Bernhardt can hit that is at that top 2 to 3 player in the country level.
I think, you're good to point out Jared. I think, just given Maryland's stature in the Division I landscape, if Jared has, an explosive season, there's going to be a campaign to get him into at least the finalists. And especially if he has a really magical Rambo-like type season, I could definitely see him getting a lot of kudos. My dark horse, I guess, like I said before, it's hard to call him a dark horse, but I'm going Chris Gray. I already got all my Chris Gray stock. I'll buy any of yours that you guys want to, hedge on. So I think the fact that Sowers did go to Duke, and there's, going to be at least a home and home between Tar Heels and Blue Devils, you're going to get a lot of hype on that. And if Gray, I put this in quotes, only gets 7 points, Sowers 9 points, but North Carolina pulls out the win because they do got the dudes to run with Duke. If he can sweep Sowers or he wins the ACC tournament and has a Final Four type season, I could see Gray, being able to win the trophy at the end of the season.
I hate it's just all I want to say someone else beside an attackman. One of the just pick one of the all the crazy good attackmen, but. There isn't a Zach Currier guy out there. I mean, and Zach Currier didn't get nearly enough consideration as he should have either. But I do wish there was and Connor Kearse is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but I wish there was one of those guys. And Zach Currier is 1 in a million. But I do wish there was one of those guys where you could really look at and be like, hey, here's this dude who's going to play amazing defense and rack up a bunch of ground balls and also score a bunch of points. Maybe someone will emerge, but it does seem this year is the year of the attackman, which is fine. I mean. They're awesome to watch.
Yeah. Moving on to freshman of the year. Any thoughts on that?
A bunch of the guys I would have picked are in the Ivy League. For instance, freshman goalie Mike Gianfrancaro from Culver. He may have started for them. He's really good. Jack Stuzen, defenseman for Yale. Probably one of the best defenders coming in. He probably would have slotted in as a starter and been good, been part of that system. And then Gerard Arceri's brother, Chris Arceri, going to Penn. They need a face-off guy now badly with Kyle Gallagher gone. He could have slotted right in and been good for them. But it's unclear if any of them are going to play, so I'm just going to pick Brendan Grimes for Hopkins. Lights-out shooter from the wing. Better passer than he gets credit for. He's a big, strong, athletic attackman. He's going to play a lot. I think he's, college ready coming out of the MIAA boy's Latin. He's on the U19 team. He's going to step in, and I think he's going to have like a 30 or 40 point season as a freshman.
I mean, it's hard to overlook Brennan O'Neill because he's like the best high school lacrosse player I've ever seen. But I do think it's just going to be hard to get into that mix at Duke. I think he's going to play, and I think he'll start. It's not going to be on attack. But kind of just that's been our assumption for a while, and based on some things we've heard, that doesn't seem like that's going to happen. But I think if he plays midfield, he'll still contribute. But I think it's just going to be tough to get into that mix. So I actually think Brendan Grimes is a good shout, just because I think he's going to play. Like, I think it benefits Hopkins to play a guy as talented as he is and as young as he is, and to just let him go through all of it. A lot of these other teams, you look at some of the top guys, going to Duke, going to Syracuse, going to Carolina, going to Maryland, where they bring so many guys back, and there's so many guys, already there that it's going to be hard to break into that, kind of mix. Owen Hiltz, maybe there could be a spot for him at Cuse. But I think Grimes is one. He's super talented. He's a beast. But there's going to be, room, and they're going to let him, I think, get a chance to play. And so, yeah, I think that's actually a good shot.
I think your points about O'Neill are spot on. It's tough to crack the lineup if you got just excellent players like Sowers and the like on the roster. I'll go with you, Adam, and I'll just go with Grimes because I kind of share this in the DMs. I definitely think it's going to be one of the more challenging seasons for freshmen, given the fact that a lot of them had their senior seasons entirely canceled in certain states. So, and a lot of those states are those hotbeds like Maryland, Jersey. A significant portion of the college lacrosse season was unavailable. So I think it's just going to be already difficult to make that leap to the college game, and I think it's going to be even more so given the challenges of COVID and not having like real live games besides maybe some travel stuff over the summer. But I wish them the best. Now I think move to what I think is going to be one of our other exciting parts of the show. Biggest impact transfers.
I feel like we've covered them a lot over the course of the pod already. Gallagher to Notre Dame, Adler to Duke, Pearson to Hopkins, and Holden to Maryland. I think those are probably the four biggest ones for me.
Yeah, I mean, we've covered it. The obvious one, again, a lot of this is aside from Mike. But aside from that, I think it's the second Mike on Duke that's the big one. Is Mike Adler. That's what I would go with. They needed a goalie, and he's as good as it gets. I mean, that guy he took on a lot of shots at St. Joe's. I mean, like maybe the save percentage wasn't quite good, but the number of shots he faced and the difficulty of the shots he faced was crazy, and he made a bunch of big saves. So yeah, if I had to pick one, I'd go with Mike Adler.
Yeah, I think Gallagher has the potential to be one of the biggest impact makers, just like a team that, pretty okay, and then, they start to have a really elite face-off man. Maybe they can transform into something. But forgive me, I'm going to go a little homer pick. I'm going to go with Pearson at Hopkins in terms of, again, like biggest impact. The goal has been something that's challenged the Blue Jays for multiple years, to be honest. And I think of a guy of his caliber, and if Milliman, kind of has that first year magic that he had at Cornell, being able to grab a guy like Kirsten and plug him into goal, could help, give the Jays a pretty exciting season. Yeah, it was, Jake, this point about Adler, like, a lot of offensive players and face-off guys got a lot of attention during the transfer market. But yeah, the goalies that got, spots at Duke for Adler and Johns Hopkins for Kirsten. I think they may end up being some of the biggest impact makers this year. Next up, always a fun topic, dark horse teams for the 2021 season.
I've got two. One is Delaware. We love us a Ben DeLuca team here in college cross. They're on the upswing. They've got Mike Robinson this Canadian freshman from Culver who's really good last year. They bring in Justin Scott, another Canadian midfielder from Hobart, who's a solid goal scorer. I think they're going to make some noise in the CAA and challenge UMass for the title there. And then my other one is Navy, year 2 under Amplo. They were really young last year, really, really, really young. They didn't have a single senior on the roster who scored a goal, which is an unbelievable statistic. I think they only had like 5 seniors in total on the roster. So they're super young. They're going to be 1 year older, 1 year more experienced under Amplo. They're bringing another good recruiting class. I think Navy will be back in the Patriot League tournament and, pushing for a top 4 or 5 slot in the Patriot.
Delaware's a good one, as we always say. We love Ben DeLuca. I might be stealing this one away from Safe. I hope I'm not. But I'm on St. Joe's.
Oh, no, that's good. That's definitely good.
St. Joe's, aside from being blown out by Penn State in ignominious fashion a year ago, they did beat Delaware. They beat Delaware 11-8. Losing Mike Adler is obviously brutal. It's tough, but you don't only give up 9.7 goals just from your goalie. Another part of that was faceoffs, and they bring back Zach Cole, who's an All-American at faceoffs. He won 75.5%. He was a beast. And then I think they're going to get better on offense because their 2 best players on offense were freshmen. Levi Anderson and Matt Bomer were 2 freshmen and playing their first 7 games, and they had solid starts. And then the rest is a bunch of juniors, all back. So Adler is a big loss, but he's really the only loss, because I mean it's nuts. There were, now that I'm kind of doing the math in my head, 21 freshmen on that St. Joe's team a year ago. That's nuts. And they were still 5-2 and nearly beat Penn. They lost by a goal. I think it might have been in overtime. So just coin flip away there from being 6-1. They come so close every year. They're underrated to me just because they can't get over that hump in that NEC championship game. I think this is the year. I think this is the year they get it done. I think it puts Taylor Ray foremost in the mind in terms of one of the best coaches in the country. So dark horse team to get into the tournament, and then maybe I don't know if they're going to win a game, but maybe give a team a scare in the first round. I'll go with St. Joseph's.
A little bit of fan service here, so shout out to the fans that are going to be really happy. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. I think, of any team, as you noted, Jake, in the too early post, they are entirely different almost than the team that they had in 2020. They got a great face-off guy in Gallagher. Will York, it's a player. Got 25 goals, 6 assists, 6 games last year at Bucknell. John Leahy, and they lose Costabile, which is a loss. It was All-American in 2019, but they totally transformed themselves, and offensively, would love them to be a little bit more dynamic, like you guys would. But Notre Dame does have a knack of stealing 1 or 2 ACC wins that maybe they shouldn't get. So, hadn't had the seasons that they were kind of used to last 2 or 3 years. But I think, like I said, I think this offseason was so weird and unique that Corrigan took advantage of it and totally transformed his team for at least a 2021 season. So he's my dark horse to be a consistent top 5-6 team. I'm going to go with Notre Dame. Now let's lay our chips, gentlemen. Let me hear your final 4 predictions for the 2021 season.
Try to run through this quickly. I'll go Duke 1, as for the reasons I mentioned before, just too talented. I'll go UNC 2. They were 3rd best in offensive efficiency last year, better than Syracuse, better than Penn State, better than Maryland. Now they bring in an elite midfield dodger in McCarthy to take some attention off Gray. They're going to outscore a million teams. All you have to do in the tournament to make the Final Four is get hot at the right time. And they're kind of built. They're a team that's built to get hot at the right time. I'm going to go Denver, pending TD's transfer. If they get him, they're gonna just smash teams in the face by winning faceoffs and scoring efficiently. Jackson Moore running the show there. They got an elite shorty in Danny Logan. And then 4, I think I'm going to go Georgetown. They're really good last year. Both sides of the ball are elite. They bring everybody back. I think according to our friend at Lacrosse Reference, they were the most efficient team in the country, accounting for offense and defense. So, they're solid in all phases. You can just get the sense that they're on the doorstep. Kevin Warren's coming and knocking. He's knocking on that door. And it just feels like they're about to put it all together. So Georgetown, Denver, UNC, Duke.
I'll go Duke. Yes, I mean it's hard to look past them, just with the talent, the sheer talent there. And if anyone can make all that chemistry work, it's John Dodowski. It's Maryland for me then too. I think this has all the potential in the world to be John Tillman's best team. I think offensively they're just as good as it gets, and I think they'll get the stops they need to get there. 3 for me, I will go with. I think I'll go with North Carolina. Yeah, I just think. This is a bit tough. I'll switch and go Virginia. I'll switch and go Virginia just because I think they're just a bit more probably balanced throughout. I just have a bit of questions with Carolina in goal to a degree. I think Virginia, they're a bit more balanced there. So I'll take the Cavs, and then I'll go Georgetown as well. I think there's one team that's going to get hot. Like there's one of those teams in that 5 to 9 mix that gets hot and springs an upset on quarterfinal weekend, and I think Georgetown is kind of perfectly poised to be that team. They've got an elite ex-attackman. They've got a great defender. They've got a great goalie, great face-off guy. So I will go with the Hoyas, like Adam does. Duke, Maryland, Virginia, Georgetown for me.
Both of you guys, I agree. I agree with both of you guys in terms of Maryland, Duke, and so I won't waste too much time with them. I will go with UNC, Jake. I hear you why you went to UVA, but I do think, like as we keep saying, Freshie's got his dudes, and I think they really could have kind of a special season there. And I will go with Georgetown. I mean, Adam, you made a good point. Like, TD going to Denver kind of changes the dynamics of the Big East. But as soon as this whole TD stuff to Denver was at least in the ether, I immediately thought of that amazing Georgetown versus the Yale game back in 2019 in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, it was kind of a little bit of an anomaly because Bucaro just had such an amazing game. But Yale got, I believe, I'm on the page right now, 34 faceoffs to Georgetown's 5. Like Georgetown went 2 quarters literally without winning a faceoff, the second and third. And they still were able to put it, make it a game of it. So I just think in my mind, I was like, Warren must think of that game often now that TV's going to Denver. I can see if maybe figuring out like a kind of a revenge to take down a very loaded Denver team. But I'm going to use my time to talk a lot about the Hoyas because I'm going to go with them as my Final Four team. MD, Duke, Tar Heels, and Georgetown. Gentlemen, I won't let you guys go before I get one bold prediction, or at least on this segment. I won't let you guys go without giving me one bold prediction for the 2021 season.
I just realized none of us picked Syracuse. That's not my bold prediction. I'm just pointing that out. My bold prediction is that TD Ierlan will not finish in the top 5 in face-off percentage.
Ooh.
The completely new rules. Nobody has any idea how they're going to play out. Do I think he's still going to be really good? Yes. Do I think he's still going to be like a top 10 face-off guy? Of course. But, I think maybe the new rules create an opening for somebody else to steal the top couple spots. I have no idea if that's going to happen. I just think there's enough uncertainty around how the new rules are going to play out and how the refs are going to adjudicate them that it's not a guarantee that just because he's been dominant with the old rules that he'll be just as good with the new rules. So maybe he will be, but like I said, I think there's enough uncertainty there that it's not a lock.
I've got kind of two, I guess. One, I think I'm going to be optimistic and say we get a regular 16-team NCAA tournament in. I think things will be good come May. I think we're at the light at the end of the tunnel, thankfully, with this pandemic, and I think it'll be sketchy on the way there. I think there will be cancellations, there will be postponements, there will be difficulties. But I think I'm going to be cautiously optimistic. Get the vaccine out to a lot of people, a lot of players, hopefully, and personnel with the teams, come May, and cases going down. So I'm going to say we're going to have a 16-team NCAA tournament. Maybe they change it up a bit. Maybe they go to kind of like the basketball tournament. Maybe they kind of try to hub teams in, one or two. Maybe there's 4, locations for the first round. Or maybe like all one location for the quarterfinal. Try to make it, the Final Four, something like that, through all the rounds. Something like that potentially. But I think we get a 16-team NCAA tournament. And then bold from a kind of team perspective, kind of prediction, I'll say Richmond wins an NCAA tournament game.
Like them both. That was mine for bold prediction. With a regular NCAA tournament this year, I think by May, if enough people have vaccines moved out and people just, after a full year of COVID and the things that we've learned from it, and the other sports that we've had a season, I think like once the weather really starts getting warmer and nicer in April and May, that maybe it's too much hope, but I believe things will get to a point where we have the tournament. And kind of with that, I think we will have fans at 50% of the games this year. So that's going to be my full prediction. Maybe not be full attendance, you can just walk in and stuff, but I think you're definitely going to not definitely, but I think you're going to have parents at least, because it's going to be outdoors, so it helps. Parents at least have an option to go, and then maybe like a small assortment of tickets, fans that who would like to attend games. So hoping to see the Jays up at Rutgers this year. I can look at the reader questions for when we move to our next section, but I don't know if you guys had Twitter or some of those reader questions ready. We can look for that. Oh, you do? Wonderful,
yeah,
dude.
them in our outline. One of them was fans. A lot of the question was fans. I don't want to say 50% of games, but I will say that there is a smattering of fans come the Final Four. I don't know how many. Maybe it's 20% capacity. Maybe it's 25. But I do think there will be a smattering of fans come the Final Four. I can't see. I have a hard time seeing the Northeast, Big Ten teams allowing fans maybe towards May. Maybe. I think with maybe some of the more Southern teams, maybe the Western teams, maybe we see that. But I don't know if I'll say 50% of the games. I think it probably will be a bit. But I think maybe April, May, you get it. But I do think there will be some fans in some capacity for the NCAA tournament, the Final Four. Other questions? We had one asking for Coach of the Year.
Oh, we've talked him up enough already, but I guess I'll go Kevin Warren, considering we're all very high on Georgetown. It's sort of an award to cap off the last 2 or 3 years for Georgetown, and their rise to the top. But if they make the Final Four, I think Kevin Warren wins Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I think if Georgetown makes it, they win. He wins it. I think if Maryland wins the title, Tillman's going to get it. Just given that so much attention is on the ACC teams, from Duke being loaded to Syracuse defending their title to North Carolina just going to have a million goals this year, and UVA is a 4 ACC teams in the top 5. It would be a great year for Maryland to. It would be a really fun year if Maryland kind of spoils everything, wins the title, and it's kind of this unique circumstance with grabbing Benson at the last moment. So if Maryland wins the title, yeah, I'm going to go with that. Tillman.
Yeah, I think if Duke or Maryland has the year kind of we're expecting, where maybe they only lose 1 or 2 or 3 games and they, have a bunch of big wins and win the tournament, I think it'll probably go to Danowski or Tillman. But I will go for. I predicted them to win an NCAA tournament game. That'll be for the first time, so I'll say Dan Chamati.
Chamati. I love that for Dick. I love it was behind enemy lines
Oh my
section.
God.
Wonderful.
So good.
We need to give that a shout out. I mean, since you had a good point with Chamati, I don't want to butcher the line, but I think it was essentially Dan Chamati needs another job.
Yeah.
It was glowing praise from a SoCon coach about Chamati. It's great. You've got to check out the U.S. Lacrosse Magazine article on the Spiders. But sorry to ruin momentum, but I had to note that when you said Chamati.
Right. Another question was, will there be a championship? I think we all think yes. And then how will they get in if there aren't 8 conferences playing? And I think my answer to that is, if we have fewer than 8 conferences playing by the end, I'm getting the feeling that something bad has happened to the point that the season just isn't going to happen. Like, I think the Ivy's not going to play, and we know that. But other than that, it looks like we're going to have 9 other conferences playing. So if we're down to like 7 conferences or 6, I just don't see there being like 60% of college lacrosse still playing while 40% is out. I think if that happens, we're just in a situation, unfortunately, like last year, where it's just not likely to see that happen. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think everyone finishes. Can I address this one? TV. Be patient. I know Adam's kind of in our DMs noticed some listings popping up, but that's kind of it so far.
Yeah, they put some placeholders into the ESPN app. I think we'll have a schedule in the next 2 weeks. They may be waiting on the Big Ten to finalize their stuff and for the ACC to officially release their schedules. Yeah, I mean, there's not much of an update there. We're sort of just at the waiting for ESPN and the Big Ten Network to finalize their listings. But there will be games on TV, so nothing to worry about.
And that was pretty much it. We packed a lot in here, but it's going to be a season unlike any other. So if we were ever going to kind of go past our runtime, I think this was the one to do it for.
I did notice one last late submission. Just want to throw it out there. Would a catastrophic collision during the dive reverse the dive rule?
The dive's going away soon anyway. So.
Yeah.
That
define catastrophic.
I'm guessing like a broken leg, in which case, yeah.
Anything involving a stretcher having been carted off, I think would suffice.
Yeah, I think enough people would put up a stink, or they'd probably adjust it or get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
the dive only came back because Bill Tierney got mad that it happened against Denver in that Final Four game against Maryland. Like, there was no call for the. Like, it would be mentioned once a year. Something be like, man, should we bring the dive back? And then Billy T complained in the post-game press conference, so it happened. And then they put in the rule, and everyone was like, oh wow, this stinks. And they realized they actually didn't miss the dive that much.
Nobody missed it, exactly.
Yeah, it's whatever. They can get rid of it. I don't care. But yeah, I think if a goalie breaks his leg, yes, that would definitely be okay. Maybe an emergency, they all huddle together for the rest of the season and be like, it's done now.
One couple or 2 parts. That's what I see here. Friend of the pod in the D3 football huddle. If we get good news that Hobart is going to play, do they and Cuse play for the Cross Simmons this season? Where could that game be squeezed in? Weeknight, probably. I'll just go there. I don't think so. I mean, maybe like they're going to have non-conference game.
I think we saw a Syracuse. I think in our DMs I think we'd heard some news about Syracuse's schedule and what it might look like, and I honestly can't remember. I'd love to give a scoop that they're going of something, but I cannot recall if they were on it or not, and it's too far back in our DMs to go search for it. So I think they'll probably play, but because it's in New York and that seems to be what Cuse is scheduling normally and this year especially. So I think it'll happen, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah, I think sorry, Adam, if you want to go first.
I have no idea.
I was going to say, I think, if Hobart goes forward with the season and Syracuse has an opening for a non-conference game, that given that there's a title involved, the proximity of the two schools and the history, I think that's easier and something Syracuse is more likely to swing. I think if you put in their rankings of the rivalry games that they would love to have, the Cornell and Hopkins game is probably up there, but Hobart's game is equally has a large place in Syracuse in terms of history. So if they can do it, this is the year to buy it out in terms of being able to have a team that's just right up in upstate New York area to come over and find a field to play. But there's going to be a lot of challenges with the COVID, so I don't know if they'll actually make that happen. That's it for questions. Gentlemen, this was a great show. Hope you guys enjoyed listening. Any final thoughts before we sign off?
Get ready for the spectacle this weekend.
Yeah.
Sean Goldsmith.
The man.
If anyone was wondering if we
do y'all remember the Rambo kills tracker that Hoya did 6 years ago when Matt Rambo debuted?
Of course.
Which was one of the best features on the site. We might have to bring a glasses, just go with glasses for how many goals Sean Goldsmith scores.
Oh.
Ryan will have to mock up, and if he scores 5 goals, we'll put up a graphic with 5 glasses.
In each game, tweet the old the most recent game with the additions for that game. So he does 5 goals this week, then he does 8 the next week. You'll tweet the 5 goals with 13 glasses. The next game.
Yes, we might have
who can use Photoshop. Just keep layering sets of glasses on top of each other on his face.
The recent
10 sets of glasses.
Someone did a recent Bernie meme with Troy and Buck before the Green Bay game, but Bernie was sitting in all the seats in the background, so you could put Sean's headshot.
Sean Goldsmith's face on it, yes.
Exactly, instead of the Bernie's headshots. If you're wondering why we didn't do too much Goldsmith or more Goldsmith talk, trust us, that will be happening this season. So we didn't want to layer it too thick right out the gate.
We're in deep, man. This is the central hub of the Goldsmith fan club.
Yes,
really, it's our mentions. All the Mercer fans in our mentions. God bless them. They're the best.
Amen.
They're probably on the ground floor, but we're the one step up the elevator.
Exactly. Shout out to the Mercer Army. Absolutely. Wonderful show. Loved having you guys both. Look forward to another fun season. Maybe do some different things. Shout out to Skype for incorporating the recording function, which we knew they've always had. They probably have everything we've ever said on Skype, but at least now we can make it into pods and share it with everybody else. So you can find this pod over on our Podomatic page or by subscribing to iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. No, Google Play is now Google Podcasts. Additionally, you can play this episode when we put it out in the tweet. We'd like to thank you all for your continuous support. looking forward to a great 2021 season. And, thanks again for listening.
Stay hydrated. Becky Lynch for
Go
president.
Bears.